All right, at 6:05, let's go ahead and get started. To kick us off tonight, I want to welcome the Mecklenburg County Park and Recreation Department Director Lee Jones to start the presentation.
Okay, are we ready? Good evening, everyone. This is Lee Jones. I'm the Mecklenburg County Park and Recreation Director. Thanking you for taking the time out of this rainy evening to participate in this public information session regarding Long Creek Greenway stream enhancement and along Treyburn Drive to Oakdale Road. This is a very exciting project. As many of you know, greenways are our most desired amenity right now in terms of our park and recreation portfolio. So tonight, staff's going to talk about this, and I'm going to try to talk over this thunder where I am to just introduce a few staff members that we have here tonight. As I might have mentioned before, this is part of our accelerated Greenway plan because of the popularity of these, to try to get them done as quickly and efficiently as we can to really have equity in the location of these greenways and to unify our system. First, she's already introduced herself. I'd like to introduce Katie Lloyd, who's our senior planner in capital planning. We also have David Booth, who works with asset facility management, and he's one of the project managers on this. We also have Brian Sykes with stormwater. I'm going to scroll on down. I see Peter Cook, our deputy director for Mecklenburg County Park and Recreation. I also see who is not a staff member, but she's an important advocate for our park and recreation system and the environment, and that is Vice Chair of the Board of County Commissioners, Miss Elaine Powell. Scrolling on down, I also see Commissioner Lee Altman, who I had the pleasure of seeing yesterday and finally meeting her in person. We have another planner, Katie Daughtry, and another planner, Darnico Waters from our Park and Recreation Department. We have our regional manager for this region, Mr. Michael Campbell. And I think that about covers it. If I missed anyone, because a lot of people have called in and I can't really see their names, let me apologize. I also see a couple of our Park and Recreation commissioners who are appointed by the Board of Commissioners to be your advocates for amenities within our Mecklenburg County Park and Recreation system. I see Mr. Mark Laughlin. I see Mr. Kip Kaiser. If there's anyone that I left out, please feel free to raise your hand so I can acknowledge you. But again, thank you for coming out tonight, and I look forward to this presentation to get you updated as to where we are with this project. With that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to Katie Lloyd, our senior planner. Katie?
Thanks, Lee. All right. So I'm Katie, and it's good to see all of you on the call tonight. Before we get started, I wanted to walk you through some of the features of our virtual meeting platform. It is important that everyone stays muted throughout the presentation. You will notice a button on the bottom left of your screen. Make sure there's a red slash through the microphone. There will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end, either by unmuting or using the chat feature. At this time, you are free to turn on your video or so that we can see you. If you have questions or comments throughout the presentation, please use the chat function. There is a button on the bottom of your screen to bring up the chat box. It should look something like this. If you guys are all right with it, let's test out the chat feature. Please type in your name, your zip code, and your favorite place to walk or bike today. It could be a park, a greenway, a downtown area, or your neighborhood streets. So we can give you a minute to type those in. See a good mix of neighborhoods and parks, greenways. A good number of different greenways throughout the county. That's great, thank you. All right, this project takes a big team. It's a fairly large greenway project, and it has a lot of elements. The team includes land design, wildlands, STV, neighboring concepts, ECS, and CES. Tonight, you will hear from Aaron Wagner, the Greenway Project Manager from Land Design, and Emily Reinecker, the Stream Restoration Project Manager from Wildlands. Haiti Daughtry and Darnica Waters are also on the call from our team at Capital Planning to help with the logistics of the Zoom meeting. We wanted to start this meeting a little differently with some fun facts about the Long Creek corridor. While Long Creek is quite long and includes 55 miles of streams in the creek shed, it was named after the Revolutionary War captain, John Long. The corridor stretches from near North Lake Mall and the I-77 to the Catawba River near the U.S. National Whitewater Center. The corridor also includes historic sites, such as the Long Creek Mill ruins, which we hope to provide access to near the proposed Beatty's Ford Trailhead. Just to give you a little overview of our greenway system, greenways are strips of undeveloped land near urban areas set aside for recreational use or environmental protection. We build greenway trails to activate this land as linear parks that connect people and places by linking neighborhoods, offices, parks, schools, and shopping areas. These trails provide alternative ways to move through our city, suburbs, and small towns, both for transportation and recreation. As Lee mentioned earlier, paved walking and biking trails are the #1 requested amenity by the residents of Mecklenburg County, according to citizen surveys completed as part of our 2015 and current 2020 master plan update. Our current master plan calls for over 300 miles of greenway trails along creeks and streams and 200 miles of urban trails along roadways and through urban areas. Lee also mentioned the Accelerated Greenway Plan. Currently, we have more than 56 miles of greenway trails that are complete, with a goal to add 30 new miles of trail between 2019 and 2023. To accomplish that goal and to meet community demand, we and our partners are working on the Accelerated Greenway Plan that includes over 40 miles of trail that is in design or construction. To give you an idea of where those projects are, this map shows the Accelerated Greenway projects that we're working on. The blue dots indicate projects that are funded through our 5-year capital improvement plan. The magenta dots represent the 5 new projects which were funded last year to meet this community demand to increase our access to our trail network. As you can see circled here in pink, that one of these projects is the Long Creek project that we'll be discussing tonight. So shown on this map here, kind of a little bit enlarged, you can see it's in the northwest part of Mecklenburg County. And the project we'll talk about tonight is shown here in orange on the left side of the screen. The red line adjacent to this is actually the first phase of Long Creek Greenway that is currently under construction. And the dashed lines on this map show future trails that are currently unfunded. Here's a little more information about that first phase of Long Creek Greenway that's under construction. This phase will connect some multifamily apartments near I-77 to Treyburn Drive. Well, this where the next project will pick up, with a trail along Dixon Branch Greenway. And I'll try to go on the map here. So this is Long Creek here. And then this is Dixon Branch. So it'll go up to Dixon Branch Greenway underneath W.T. Harris and connect over near, this is the Target, if you're familiar with the North Lake Mall area. So we hope to wrap up this project probably in early, I'll say spring or maybe summer, depending on weather of 2022. Now I want to turn it over to Aaron from Land Design to walk you through the specifics of this project. Aaron, are you on?
Hey, can you hear me now, Katie?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, great. Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Aaron Wagner. I'm a civil engineer and project manager with a firm called Land Design here in Charlotte. We're currently working with Mecklenburg County on the design of Long Creek Greenway Phase 1 and 2. Long Creek Greenway Phase 1 extends west from I-77 to Treyburn Drive, a little over 2 miles in total. This project is a combined stream restoration and a greenway project with an overall construction schedule of 18 months. This project begins with stream work construction and then transitions into the greenway work toward the middle of the later portion of the project. Long Creek Greenway Phase 2 is a larger project with a little over 3.5 miles in total. Therefore, this project has an anticipated construction schedule of 24 months. Similar to Phase 1, this project also includes stream enhancement and greenway construction work. Please note that these schedules are approximate and subject to change. So the overall Greenway length of this phase 2 is a little over 3.5 miles and includes 2 miles of stream enhancements within Long Creek. This map shown is split into 4 different segments. This project begins on the right side of the plan, which connects into the existing phase 1 currently in construction, and this section extends to I-77. This project extends under I-485 in 2 different locations as well as under Betty's Ford Road. It also provides secondary trail connections to several neighborhoods and public streets. The overall project also includes 2 proposed trailheads with parking for approximately 40 to 60 cars at each Betty's Ford Road and Oakdale Road shown on the bottom left. The Oakdale Road trailhead will include a public restroom facility. There will be roadway improvements along Oakdale Road and Betty's Ford Road as part of this project for turn lanes. So starting here with section A, this section is approximately 3/4 miles of main trail. This begins at the end of phase 1 that's currently in construction, starting on the right side of the plan. This section includes 2 neighborhood connections, shown one of these to Ambleside Drive on the bottom of the plan, the second being to Belstead Brook Court on the left side of the plan shown. This section also has room to allow for 0.6 miles of stream restoration and realignment. The banks that have been eroded over time will be laid back and meanders in the stream will be added in to help promote improved creek health. Due to large amounts of wetlands and wet soils within this area, the trail will need about 1,000 feet of elevated boardwalk to keep the trail dry. There will also be a pedestrian bridge over a small tributary. The trail will be built to cross underneath 485, which you can see in the photos on the right side of the slide. So moving on to section B, this section totals just over 1 mile. There will be boardwalk connection to the ruins of an historic mill site off the main trail. A trailhead will be proposed at Betty's Ford Road and will provide parking and access to the main Greenway trail. The trail passes underneath Betty's Ford Road and travels through wooded areas and wetlands, requiring a total of about 1,500 feet of boardwalk throughout this section. A neighborhood connection will also use a pedestrian bridge over Long Creek, which will connect to Trotter Road via boardwalk section. This section is also through a wet area of wet soils through that section. There will also be a long connector trail shown there that connects to Trotter Road. So the photo on the left shows the remnants of the historic mill site. This is a really cool site that had an existing mill race and channel that will be preserved, and the trail will provide an elevated overlook to this area. We're also coordinating with the Historic Landmarks Commission for the mill site and potential signage to help display this site. The middle photo is the location of the maintenance access trail off Betty's Ford Road. The right photo shows the existing condition of the Long Creek. This photo is taken standing on the Betty's Ford Road bridge looking downstream. This section will see some stream enhancements as part of the project as well. All right, moving on to section C. This section as well is just under 1 mile, with 1/4 mile of that being boardwalk. This trail crosses back under 485 and makes its way into the Oak Hills Golf Course. The section also includes a 1/2 mile connector to Prim Road shown on the bottom of the plan, as well as a 1/4 mile connector to Riceland Place. This section has really great pastoral views, as well as cool views of really cool rock outcroppings within the creek shown on the right of the slide here. So this is the last section of the project. This is roughly 1 mile through the Oak Hills Golf Course. This section will include a pedestrian bridge which crosses over McIntyre Creek, and the end of this project will stub out onto Oakdale Road. The Oak Hills Golf Course will become Oak Hills Park, which is currently being planned by others. The trail stays at the perimeter of the site to allow for maximum flexibility when the future park is implemented. There will also be a trailhead off of Oakdale Road, which provides parking and a restroom facility, as well as turn lane improvements within Oakdale Road. Oakdale Road will be widened to accommodate left turn lane into the trailhead. There are beautiful pastoral views and large trees, as well as ponds within the Oak Hills Future Park. Park and Recreation is in the early stage of planning the future park site. Please take a look at the public input page to see potential concepts and provide any additional feedback. Since this project will include a new parking lot, we wanted to show you some examples of our other trailheads throughout the system. The main features of a trailhead consist of parking, restrooms, drinking fountains, maintenance facilities, and sometimes small play areas. The parking lot at Oakdale Road will have a restroom, but the trailhead at Betty's Ford Road will not. This is a photo from Little Sugar Creek Greenway, example of a weathered steel bridge. This will be proposed on this project over Long Creek in multiple areas on the Phase 2 project. While most of the trail will be asphalt, the trail surface over any new bridge will be a concrete surface. This is another example of a project along Little Sugar Creek Greenway at Archdale Road. This is a very similar condition to what we'll be proposing under Betty's Ford Road. By separating the trail from vehicular traffic, we can provide a more protected facility that can serve all ages and abilities of people riding bikes or walking. And this is just a good example of a recent boardwalk construction along one of the greenways. This is going to be utilized for any areas over wetlands as well as minor stream crossings. And as very similar to the bridge, this will transition from an asphalt trail to a concrete surface through any of the boardwalk sections. Finally, this is an example of our wayfinding signage package that we'll use across the entire county. We have pedestrian scale signs at entrances and along the trail to indicate mile markers. At points, we also have kiosk signage to show maps, rules, and other important information. I'd now like to introduce Emily Reinecker with Wildlands Engineering. Emily is a civil engineer and project manager for the Stream Enhancement project. She will go through an overview of this portion of the project next.
Thanks, Aaron. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Reinecker. I'm a civil engineer with a firm called Wildlands Engineering right here in Charlotte, and we are working with Charlotte-Mecklenburg Stormwater Services to improve Long Creek, the stream itself. Charlotte-Mecklenburg Stormwater Services is excited to partner on this project with Long Creek. The creek will be improved from Treyburn Drive to 485, which is about half the length of the Greenway project. We will work on 2 miles of stream. This work is being funded by local stormwater fees and by a state grant from the North Carolina Land and Water Fund. The problems that we see on Long Creek are due to eroding banks. Bank erosion adds dirt to the water, which is bad for water quality. Long Creek flows into Mountain Island Lake, which is a primary drinking water source for Charlotte. So we want to do what we can to keep our drinking water clean. Bank erosion, like we see on Long Creek, is a water quality problem and also a problem for the trees in the forest along the creek. Bank erosion undercuts the tree roots and causes trees to fall into the creek. These trees block flow and cause flooding problems. To fix these problems, we will lay banks back to a more gentle slope. Where the banks are vertical now, or straight up and down, we will make a more gradual slope. What you see here is a picture of a project we recently completed in Reedy Creek Park. On the left was the creek before restoration, And on the right is a photo of after construction. To do this work, we will dig a bench next to the channel to add capacity to the stream channel. When we do this grading work, sloping back banks and cutting a bench, we will have to cut down some trees. We will plant the banks and the new bench with new trees to stabilize the area long term. It will take a while for these new trees to grow up, but once they do, the area will be more stable than it is now. So at first you will see grasses, then small trees and shrubs will appear. After a few years, larger hardwood trees will dominate and new growth will continue for years to come. As Erin mentioned, where we have space, we will move the channel and add in curves. These curves, called meanders, help to slow the water down. The meanders also provide different habitat types in the stream, places for fish to live. We will use rocks, boulders, and logs to build structures in the stream. Any of the trees that we must cut down during construction will be incorporated into the stream enhancement. These wood and rock structures will prevent further erosion and will also improve the habitat for fish and for wildlife. As part of our design work, we compare current flooding to the way the creek will flow and react to storms after construction. We are careful to design the stream enhancement, the greenway, and the bridges in a way that does not worsen flooding on the surrounding properties.
Thanks, Emily and Erin. With that, we wanted to open it up to questions from you guys about the project, either the Greenway or the stream project. We also wanted to point out, I think most of you registered online, so please visit over the course of the next few months or the next year, a couple years really, as we finish design and move into construction. Keep visiting publicinput.com/Long Creek to check back in on project updates and to get in touch with us if you have any questions throughout the process. I believe Katie Daughtry is going to help us with the Q&A. Katie, have we had any questions in the chat so far?
Just a question about where to contribute ideas for the park, but other than that, the chat has been fairly quiet.
So now would be a good time, if someone has a question, you can type it into the chat, or I don't think we're too big of a group. You could probably unmute and ask your question as well. Looks like Betty, did you raise your hand?
There's also a question. Oh,
Thanks, starting to get Betty. We can't hear you yet. If you can try to unmute, and if not, we may move to the next question.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
My property is on the very end of Kimmel Lane. That's right from Treyburn. And the creek is right close to my house. And my property actually ends right before the floodplain. And with the creek improvement, I kind of have a concern about flooding in that area, because it gets up pretty high right now. And if you're leveling it down lower, I'm kind of concerned that the water will raise higher.
Brian, are you on to address that?
I am. Hey, Betty, can you hear me?
I can.
Great. So I work for Stormwater, and in the Stormwater Department is the group called Flood Mitigation. And so we have engineers, including the consultant Wildlands, that ensures that everything that we do does not cause an increase in that 100-year storm event, that flood event, which is what you're referring to in your yard. So just like any developer, we have to submit our plans to FEMA, and we go through a painstaking process to show that we don't raise it at all. So for those larger 100-year storm events, we're not allowed to cause a rise. And so we demonstrate that to FEMA.
Okay. And my next question is about the access. Will there be access from, one of my neighbors said that there would be access from Kimmel to the trail. And there's also, right now, we have a problem with the wooded area back there. There's a lot of ATVs that go through that area regularly. Will those ATVs be allowed to use the trail, or how does that work?
So that's a good question. We notice a lot of ATVs back there as well. So for your neighborhood, you said you're right off Treyburn, I believe. We are
No,
providing.
I'm off of Kimmel, which is right up against the trail.
Okay. So is Kimmel off of Treyburn?
Kimmel is off of Treyburn, okay?
Okay.
But it goes all the way down to the creek. The creek is right in my backyard.
Right backyard. Okay. So the only connection we're providing near there is to Treyburn itself, which is right here. If you're familiar with this area, if you can see the screen. So that's where the access point for the trail for people walking and biking will come onto the trail. And then from that area, the main line of the creek will be on the south side of Long Creek in that area. In terms of ATVs, no, we do not allow motorized vehicles on our trail. And we do have our staff, which will kind of be on the trail to discourage that activity. And we do encourage folks, if you see ATVs, to call it in. They're not supposed to be there on the park property as well. So no, we do not allow ATVs, and we will actively work to keep them off the trail.
Okay, and the only access will be from Treyburn itself.
That's the only current planned access right there. And that's
okay.
Right here.
Thank you.
Katie, we've had a few questions in the chat while y'all have been talking. One of them was for Brian Sykes, wanting to know why the stream project ends at the 2 mile point instead of going for the entire length of the Greenway project.
That is a great question. We certainly want to extend it all the way to Oakdale, and that portion is currently in planning. So our intent is to do it, but because of budget restraints, we were only able to tackle this section this fiscal year. But the bottom section is in planning, and we'll have a website and a project page up for it soon enough that you can check periodically for schedule updates.
Great. We also had just a general thank you for bringing this project to the area. I think folks are looking forward to that. The next question is probably going to be for Katie or someone from Ops if they want to speak up. They wanted to know how we were going to handle the graffiti on the rock outcropping in section C of the trail. I guess that is a problem currently. And so they were curious how we were going to handle it once the trail is developed.
I might actually ask Brian if he has an answer for this. I think everything within the stream that would be in the stream, I think, and something typically stream operations would handle. But I don't know that we typically address graffiti unless necessary.
Well, we certainly recognize the aesthetics and the functional importance of those rock outcrops. Anytime they're in the stream, we do design around them. So we will minimize the impacts to them. And if that is not the case, Emily, speak up. But I believe the plan is to enhance them. And so there are various products, removal products that our operations uses to remove them. All of our large projects, which we call CIP projects, there's an annual inspection and we note things like that. But certainly if things crop up that are a concern to the public, you can call 311 when you're in Mecklenburg County and tell the operator what the problem is, and it'll get to us for more immediate address.
All right. Next question is, there's some concern about the existing traffic at 5 Corners, which is near the post office. And they were wanting to know they were worried that the Greenway will increase traffic at that location as well, and was wanting to know if there were any planned improvements, probably not by us, but if we were aware of any by the city in this area.
Currently right now, the NCDOT does have a plan for that intersection for, I believe, a traffic roundabout that they're planning to do, as far as being the bookend to the traffic roundabout at 485. When that's coming, we haven't really been informed on when that is planned to be installed, but you know, it's in planning. The idea is there currently is development occurring along Oakdale Road, not adjacent to our park development, which will be widening Oakdale Road and providing for proper left-hand turn lanes, so we don't get traffic backing up in people's driveways that do currently access Oakdale Road. So we're hoping that between our park improvements, which will be minimal, and those adjacent developers that are coming, that they'll go ahead and improve the widening of Oakdale Road as they move through. And then hopefully in the near future that NCDOT will fund that project for the 5 corners and create the roundabout and reconfigure all that entrance so it's a lot safer. But they are aware of it, and it is a planned project.
Great. Next question is, Katie, will there be any bike police patrols on the Greenway?
That's a good question. We do have folks patrolling our greenways, which are a combination of operations staff, park rangers, CMPD, and in some cases, private security. So it would be some combination of those folks you would see out on the trail who will be keeping an eye out and there to help you with any issues. And I think Chris Hunter might still be on the phone. Chris, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, Katie, you pretty much covered it. Obviously, with our greenways being as popular as they are, traffic, just typical traffic from people who are using the greenways. Someone mentioned earlier about the ATVs. We realize we got a problem over in the Oakdale area. What we're hoping and what we typically see is that the good traffic that we see on our amenities will help drive away that bad unwanted element.
Great. Next question. There was just a comment and maybe an opportunity for us to highlight any of these that will be part of the project about providing overlooks or educational opportunities along the trail.
That's a good question. This is a long corridor. So we haven't identified all of the resting areas, but there will be some resting areas, much like you see along Little Sugar Creek, where you will have seating, in special cases like the rock outcropping that is really beautiful and scenic, a potential to have an overlook there. And then of course at the mill site we mentioned earlier, a potential for an interpretive type experience at the historic site as well.
Great. Next question was whether or not, and I think this might just be more confirmation that the Prim Road connection will be part of this section or this project.
Yes, there is currently a kind of a longer connection that is planned for Prim Road, kind of close to the intersection with Miranda Road right here. If you can see the screen, and then also an additional connection at the end of Prim Road that would connect into the existing paths on the Oak Hills Park property, which ultimately connect into the Greenway, but it would specifically tie into some of the existing paths.
One of our participants asked if construction would be taking place on their street. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to catch what street they live on. So if that person can speak up and unmute themselves and tell us where you live, and we can answer that question directly.
That participant commented earlier in the chat. He lives on Bilstead Brook Court.
Typically with our Greenway constructions, we don't allow construction, storage or anything like that within existing neighborhoods. We try to find areas that are outside of those areas that the contractor can move back and forth. We will have a small amount of access that will come through there, and mainly that's just for the contractors to make those small connection points, and it's a very small timeline typically to come in and do those trail neighborhood connections.
Thank you. The next comment was a question about whether or not we were going to provide things like possibly an edible forest or natural art within the project scope.
Good question. We don't currently have any kind of edible orchard or anything as part of the Greenway Trail construction itself. But that would definitely be a great idea to visit the public input page and talk about potential for the future Oak Hills Park property. We don't have funding to activate all of Oak Hills yet, but that's a great idea for something to propose at that site. In terms of natural art or an art installation, we are, as part of this project, going to be working with the Arts and Science Council to do public art somewhere along the trail. I would think likely somewhere around the Oak Hills Park property. We're still working with them to identify the scope of that project. There will be some additional community engagement once we kind of narrow down what the parameters of that project will be. So I can't say exactly what that public art will be, but there is funding for public art on this trail.
Can you reiterate what the completion date for the project is anticipated to be at this point?
So the goal is to complete it by the end of 2023. We hope to bid it later this year and start construction early 2022, kind of towards the end of the first phase of construction of the first phase of Long Creek.
Great. There's another question for Brian. They wanted to know if the stream restoration was going to affect the wetlands, specifically near the Ambleside Drive area.
I do have a map up, but and if you think it's important for us to talk about that specific area, I'm glad to pull it up on my computer. But generally speaking, we work with the state and the federal government to identify all of the wetlands that are protected, and then we design around them to not impact them. Additionally, we are taking some steps out there to preserve the wetlands, the quality wetlands as well. So to answer your question, no, we do not plan on impacting them. Is that generally the case, Emily? Emily is our lead designer for Wildlands Engineering.
Yeah, so we have delineated the wetlands along the corridor so that the Greenway can reduce impacts as much as possible, and so that the stream can avoid those also. I'm trying to think of the Ambleside area. I know that we did have to do, or we are doing some boardwalks, I believe in that vicinity to cross over some wetlands there. But the creek is not being raised substantially, so I wouldn't expect the wetlands to get wetter, nor would I expect them to get drier. So we are trying to avoid them.
Great. There was a question about how we fund future maintenance of these projects once they're built. So I don't know if somebody in maintenance and operations wants to talk about that, or Katie, you want to address it?
Can start. I will say that we track all of these projects, capital projects, as we're bringing them online. We track when those will come, when those will be complete, and incorporate that into our maintenance budget request to request any additional staff that are needed or any additional funding that are needed to maintain those. But someone from operations, feel free to add to that if you'd like.
Yeah, recently over the last several years, the county has done a wonderful job of recognizing, park and recreation's infrastructure is kind of aging, and the county manager has done a really good job of infusing money into our budgets. We call it deferred maintenance, and we try and put things on life cycles so that we're being more proactive versus waiting to things disintegrate before we repair them. So, we anticipate that we will, as we build this Greenway, like all of our Greenways, we've got a Greenway team in place right now, where in the past we never had people who were dedicated specifically to the Greenways. So we've got the funding and the staffing that we need to help maintain them.
And if I can add, Katie, stormwater, with these streams, so many of these streams are impacted by urban growth. And they really are like infrastructure, like roads and things like that. And so thankfully, with the stormwater fee, we're able to put aside money to not only repair them every year, but as well to put back money in case there's emergencies like catastrophic flooding and things like that.
Thank you. There was a question about who to contact about property maintenance. I'm going to stick Michael Campbell's information in the chat, who is the North Region. Oh gosh, my mind skipped me now. Anyway, he's the person to contact for general property maintenance issues. And then Mike Monroe would be our Greenway operations and maintenance person. And I'll stick his name in the chat as well. And that's who you would contact once the trail is open.
If you're ever unsure, you can also call 311 and they will work their way back to us as well.
This Kip, I got a question about, you mentioned a while ago that there was not enough money to finish the stream restoration. What is the budget for that, and what kind of priority are you guys thinking about?
Sorry, can you hear me, Kip?
Yes.
So it is a priority. So it is one of 5 that has been selected for next year. So it is a priority. We have, begun planning. It's still early. We haven't developed the budget yet, just because we're waiting for next year's budget to be approved by the County Board of Commissioners. But it is a priority. It is in our top 5. Having the ability to do these joint projects with Greenway are so important to minimize disturbances, to the neighborhoods, and there's also some cost savings and things like that. So it is definitely a priority. They're certainly out ahead of us, but we hope that before they wrap up, we can get in there and start. But frankly, that's to be determined, and we'll know more at the end of the fiscal year in June.
My question is how do we as a PRC know what we need to lobby money for if we're waiting on county to tell us what the amount is? I mean, we don't have a clue.
So forgive me. So what's PRC?
It's the Advisors Park and Recreation Commission.
Oh, well, I'm sure Katie could speak more to that. Specific to streams, that's kind of where we're at. And, we have, many people that we can put you in touch with that you probably already know, including Dave Kanan and Tim Troutman, folks like that. And certainly Lee is familiar with our strategic planning. But Katie, can you speak to that a little more specific to phase 3? And how they can go about getting you more money to spend?
I mean, you could always advocate for more Greenway money. I mean, we definitely have a lot of green and stream money. And we as the Greenway team also really understand the benefits of having these joint projects, these joint construction projects. Brian alluded to it, but we can kind of utilize a lot of the same space during the construction itself. And there is some efficiency in building these together. So I'd be happy to talk with you later too, Kip, if you wanted to talk more about kind of the process and what we have going on with these joint stream and Greenway projects.
I'm interested in the money part.
We are too. So, let's definitely get together and talk about it, and we'll put you in touch with the people that need to hear how important it is to you.
Thank you.
All right, we've got a few more questions from the chat. One person wanted to know where the closest parking would be from the Prim Road entrance near Miranda Road.
So for that one, we're proposing 2 parking lots, one at Beatty's Ford and one in Oakdale. From that location, I think the Oakdale one might be a little bit closer. So we would direct folks to those 2 dedicated parking lots. We are proposing these other neighborhood access points, which are really seen to be kind of your walk to or bike to access points for the people that live directly around them. And so we would have kind of pedestrian scale signage related to those for people walking and biking. And then we would kind of have more vehicular signage oriented at the parking lots themselves.
The next question was a question about the connector trail between 485 and Beatty's Ford. I think it's that trail that kind of goes to the north there. They said they couldn't tell from the map where that ends.
So I believe you're talking about the one kind of right here, just north of the parking lot area.
I would think so.
If so, this is what we're proposing as an access trail to access the historic mill ruin site. So it'll be kind of a smaller bridge with a potential overlook in this area. There is a potential for, if we were able to require land in the future, to provide a neighborhood access trail further north of that.
Great. Next question is whether or not the trail is going to follow the sewer alignment or if it's on its own alignment.
I can speak to that a little bit, and then David, if you want to add anything, a little bit of both. There will be points where we are following the sewer alignment, but for a lot of this, we are kind of pulling off of it and going more through some of the woodland areas to get a little bit further away from the stream, to give the stream restoration and enhancement folks a little bit more room, but also to kind of activate some more of this parkland in this area.
Yeah, our intent is to work with Charlotte Water on their easement and hopefully to improve edges of those as they touch the trail. So we'll come back in and hopefully clean up some of that get easement, hopefully revegetate it in some areas. So knowing that they don't constantly access it, and then at the same point, taking that ability for the ATVs to get offline. So having this positive connection of where we touch all those Charlotte Water easements and access points will help take that down so people aren't coming and trying to run their ATVs or motorcycles on those areas.
The next question was asking about the entrance at North Lake. They were asking if it was in section A, but Katie, correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's part of the project that's under construction right now.
That's correct. And I can back up a little bit just so we can see that slide one more time. So the first phase that is under construction, I had more slides than I thought. Okay, so this is shown in the solid red here is that first phase that's under construction. And to try to orient you, and I'm sorry if it's small, this is Treyburn Drive right here. This is W.T. Harris, and this is Reams Road, if that helps you. So that will access kind of all of the multifamily over here near 77, and then all of the neighborhoods right here. This is a connection to Reams, Secretariat, and Bayview. I saw a message in the chat. This is the connection to Bayview here, as well as two connections to North Lake Center Parkway, I believe.
Thank you. There was another question about what we're doing to preserve wildlife when in this corridor. I don't know who wants to take that.
David, you want to take that one?
As far as wildlife, we do what we can when we get through those greenways and make sure that we're not interrupting those habitats. We do keep an eye on some of the animals and natural life that does enter these areas and make sure that our construction does not occur in those areas. Currently right now, the state allows us to come through some of these natural areas and to develop for the Greenway system, whether it's a paved trail or a boardwalk system. But we do keep sensitive eyes on what's out there as far as vegetation and wildlife, making sure that we're working with our park and rec folks for management and making sure that we're well aware of those things that are in place today and hopefully in the future.
Yeah, and we also work with Park and Rec. We also work with the state as well as the federal government, the Army Corps of Engineers, Department of Environmental Quality, to get permits that identify endangered species, threatened species, species of concern. We then go through great lengths, like David said, to minimize those impacts. Of course, the work that we're doing in the stream is creating habitat, aquatic habitat, but also because, that's kind of the bottom of the food chain, we also plant shrubs and trees that attract insects and birds, which feed on those aquatic organisms. And so there's a lot of what we're doing out there that's specific to habitat. So it's something that we obviously take serious, and it's one of our primary goals. But from our experience, there is a migration of animals out of that corridor during construction. However, we do have data that shows that they do come back. It is indeed, it will be a better place. And so we always do expect everything to come back.
All right, next question. Do we know where we need to report illegal hunting or dirt bikes on our properties? Is that just to operations?
It's a good question. Chris Hunter, jump in on this, but that could be 311 or that could be
Yeah.
police.
So obviously, it's a cat and mouse game for us, oftentimes with the ATVs and such. What I would tell you is that if you hear them out there, just call 911 and report it to the police. We work with police to when we have problem areas to have them on the lookout for the calls. So if you heard it immediately, you could call 911 and they would prioritize it through their system. As an ongoing thing, again, you could talk with staff. I think they've shared Michael Campbell's contact information with you in the chat. You could certainly send Mike an email to let him know what happened last night, and that puts it on our radar to keep a lookout for it. So, anything emergent, call 911, but otherwise you could share it with the staff.
What might be our last question? Well, oh, another one just popped up. Is the gravel access path on Ambleside just west of the proposed access shown on the map? Is that going to be part of the project or is it going to remain as is?
I believe they're talking about kind of how there's an existing path that comes up in here. So right now we're only proposing a paved path kind of to the eastern edge of Ambleside as part of this project. And then we can kind of look at what happens to those future trails later on, or those other trails.
All right, nothing else has popped up. So unless someone wants to speak up or type something into the chat, we may have gotten through most of the questions.
I believe there was a general question earlier in the chat about how do greenways affect property values and property taxes?
That's a good question. Aaron, you can jump in on this as well, but there are numerous national studies that have a positive correlation between greenway trails and property values. As we mentioned earlier, greenways are the #1 most requested amenity. So we know people love them and people use them and want to be close to them. Now, I can't say there's any specific quantifiable direct impacts to your property as part of this project. I don't have the data to support that. So there would be no kind of initial tax implications of that. But I will say that generally there is a positive correlation between greenway projects and property values.
There was a question in the chat from Betty. I'm not quite deciphering it appropriately, but Betty, if you could unmute and reiterate your question, that would be great.
If additional questions come up, who do we contact?
Oh. Well, we have the public input page. And of course, you can reach out to any of us, Katie Lloyd, myself, Katie Daughtry, any of the AFM people, and we can put their email address in the chat.
Great, thank you.
Here's also dropped in my my number as well, if you want to call or text any questions as well.
Yeah, I had a question about flooding risk at the Beatties Ford crossing. I mean, obviously, I've walked that path before just to check it out on the sewer easement, and it's pretty tight down there. And we're really close to the creek, is what it looks like. What's happening to mitigate the path flooding underneath Beatties Ford Road?
Aaron, this one's for you.
Yeah, so in that area underneath Betty's Ford Road, we're going to have to cut down a couple of feet just due to the tight vertical clearance. So what we're proposing is a soil now wall that would be up against the existing bridge abutment. So the trail would be close down to the normal water elevation within the creek. Emily can probably speak exactly to the different flooding events, but the intent is that the trail underneath Betty's Ford Road would occasionally overtop during storm drainage events. So that's intended to overtop occasionally, just due to not really having many other options to get under that bridge to meet vertical clearance requirements.
Katie, I'd also like to comment that, you know, obviously people keep in mind that most of our trails do run alongside creeks, and during weather events, they are designed to handle the water the way they do. Our staff, as soon as it's safe, as soon as we can, we're out there to scrape off any silt and mud and get the trail clean and open as quickly as we can. But just keep in mind that eventually it will happen, but we will definitely do our part.
Yeah, and I'll add one more thing to that too. We did provide a access, emergency point along the south part of Betty's Ford Road for that's really intended for if someone did get caught on the Greenway during a flooding event, that'll get them up to above the floodplain elevation really quickly up to the main street there. So that is intended for like an emergency situation if somebody was down near that area during a flooding event.
Thanks, Aaron. And Darnika dropped in the public input link as well. I think most of you probably found it when you registered for tonight. But please do visit that page. And I've got 2 more quick slides for you as well before we wrap it up. So we are also in the final stages of finishing Meck Playbook, which is the current effort to develop a new master plan for park and recreation for Mecklenburg County. And so we have just released the draft executive summary, which summarizes all of the main principles, the vision, and the goals of the master plan, which will help guide our staff and our investment in funding over the next 10 years. So I think Katie or Darnika is going to drop in the direct public input link, which will get you to this executive summary to review online. So please take a look at that. There's a couple questions to provide some input about that. So this is about everything park and recreation across the whole county, not just this project. But we'd love if you could take a look at that. And then finally, here is our contact information again, mine and Brian's. But if you get with me, I can direct you to anyone else with county staff that you would like to talk to about some of these issues related to park and recreation or to the stream. And we can stick around for a couple more minutes if there's any more questions, but otherwise, thanks so much for attending tonight.